Hi, everyone. Welcome to another session in the Oracle Hospitality Virtual Connect. I'm excited today to be able to talk with all of you about how we can work together to improve customer engagement and targeted marketing using Oracle Responsys. With me today, I have Cody Boyd, head of our advertising and marketing solution engineering team covering hospitality. One of the things that we're going to be focusing on today is how we can work better to work and personalize to allow you to innovate, adapt, and grow your business through personalized messaging and communication with your guests. To start off, Cody, I think it would be awesome if you could walk us through some examples of how you think Responsys and the marketing solutions can work with hoteliers to help better improve guest experience and hotel loyalty.
Yeah, of course, and thanks for having me. It's interesting. I was actually talking to my father before this conversation, and he's over the last 20 years probably spent, I don't know, 2,500 days in a hotel. And I was talking to him a lot about what is it like for him every time he shows up at a hotel, like what makes that experience good, what makes it work for him. And it's interesting that he commented on how often the thing that makes the difference in the experience is that person at the front desk and that sort of personalized experience, which makes sense, right? That is the one spot that you are kind of most able to personalize the experience to someone. But the interesting thing, at least from my perspective, is how that has worked over the last 20 years, but it's probably not going to be the thing that's going to work for you for the next 20. And a lot of that is driven out of how we're pushing a lot of things towards technology, keyless check-in, right? Engaging in a lot of different places kind of through your entire customer engagement that may or may not actually be engaging with that person at the front desk. And so what you have to start to think about as a business, and we think about this a lot, is we see a lot of hotels or resorts where your primary engagement, or you might do some advertising as someone's exploring options, right? You might start, do a follow-up email right after they book the trip. You might get them to download an app, and you might think about marketing to them again, after they check out to try and get them to come back to the property. But there's not a lot of thought about like all of the other points that you're engaging with them in the middle of that process. But when you think about like what a really good concierge does or a really good front desk staff does, is they're really thinking about the entire guest experience and how they can have that conversation with you as like the guest on property. And even before you get there, and start thinking through, how do I make your entire experience work? And so what a lot of the way that we think about this is, how do you take the best of what that sort of on-site concierge would do, or that really good front desk staff, and have them start to think through all of those different places that we can start to personalize that experience and make it really feel like we know who you are and what you're doing, right? Things like allowing you to join a loyalty program before you even get to before you even think about buying, right? Thinking about, how do we engage with you while you're on property, and how do I communicate with you even if there's no physical person talking to you? You never actually engage with the staff directly, right? How do we start to create those experiences? And maybe a good way of doing this is I'll kind of like walk through what an example of this type of experience could look like when you're executing with Responsys and with some of the other products in the marketing suite. Does that sound good?
That would be great. I'd love to see it. Thank you.
Yeah. So what I did was I put together like a quick example here of just kind of it's not a real hotel. If you think about like me, I have a couple of kids. I travel often with my parents, or we meet them in different locations. And as you think about that, a lot of times what we are doing is we're thinking about, how do I explore what the different resorts, different properties would be? Where are we going to decide that we're going to go? I often see ads. I would go to the site, start to check out what does the property look like. And one of the things you can start to do is engage right away, right? And allow people to do something like join your loyalty program before they ever actually make a purchase. And a lot of times what that'll get you is that actually starts to allow you to understand who they are, start to ask them questions about what they care about, what they're focused on, how they're thinking about your property in the context of their next trip. And from the perspective of marketing and being able to tailor those conversations, it allows you first to be able to send better ads and be able to actually remarket to them more effectively. And separately, it allows you to start getting out of kind of the fear of, what if I can't advertise to them because of kind of there's cookie deprecation and things that are coming that are going to change your ad experience. It allows you to start to own that relationship with your customer really early on and start tailoring how you're communicating to them. In this case, if you know that you're marketing to someone like me, you're going to want to feature things about kids and like the amenities for kids, and how your property has different things that I'm going to care about. Where if you're communicating to my father, you're probably going to be orienting around a lot of other different things that my parents are going to care about. And being able to start to create that same level of personalization really early on makes it more likely that I'm going to be someone who's going to want to say, hey, that's really interesting. I actually want to book with that property. And it's interesting how this is also where you can start to say, all right, maybe I've selected a room because I was just getting interested in it. I'd like to come to your property. I haven't really fully committed, and I've committed enough to say, let me book a room, but I'm not all the way, like in. And what you can really start to do in that space between when someone books and when they actually arrive on property is start to help me experience and think about what can that experience on property feel like, right? Maybe what you're going to start to focus on is, hey, there's some things that you could do. Like we have a yoga studio on property that we've got a family group that you can book kind of a personal family trip. Or you can start to do things like, there's like Nor1, for example, can offer upgrades directly right away to say, hey, I know that you booked a single room, but it looks like there's kind of a family of 4. Maybe you want adjoining rooms, or maybe you want to upgrade to a suite for a little bit extra. And you can also start to do things like downloading the actual app, so that when I get there, I can have a much richer experience, or start to use things like keyless entry. Or, here's kind of an advanced example we see some people doing is maybe what I can start to do is identify, the airport as a location, like a key location I want to monitor. And people who are using my app with location services enabled, I can now identify when they landed at the airport and immediately say, hey, would you like us to be prepped for when you get here an hour from now? Would you like me to, set something up, like have a table set for you at our Twilight Lounge, so that at least for me, I have kids, I'm going to probably have traveled a long ways. I want to be able to just drop my bags with the people who I get out of my car. Here's the bags, please put them in my room. And I walk the family right to a table. I promise my wife would love me if I could do that. And if you can make it so that it just happens as soon as we land, I'm reminded, I click a couple of buttons and that experience exists. Suddenly I am way more likely to come back. I'm way more likely to book with you. I'm a lot more likely to tell my friends. And what that does is as you start to coordinate this entire experience, just like you experienced with some of your best staff, it helps you shorten the amount of time it takes for someone to decide to book. It allows you to get more revenue between the time when they book and they actually come on property. And ultimately, it helps you drive a much richer experience that leads to a better customer lifetime value across not just that one property, but if you can start to coordinate across all of your properties, or sort of the multiple different types of rooms in that one property, you create a different and richer experience with your customer than if you're just thinking about, how do I send you the message that confirms that you're doing the thing you're already doing? And that's really how we think about this is, where do you get to next? How do we help you take the best of what your staff does today and layer more and more of that into how you're communicating with customers who are increasingly asking to be self-sufficient and to be running their own experience? So is that helpful? It's like a way of thinking through how we're working with hotels.
Yeah, that's amazing. And what I really like about the story that you just told, in not just the personalization side of it that you talked about with your father and all of the travel he does, but it's simply a matter of showing there's need to be innovative now, right? Our guests are expecting different experiences from us. And whether that is the ability to adapt to their needs, whether it's a family traveling or business traveling, the fact that it can be used, innovative things like AI and location services to really target them appropriately. It's just great, the stories that you're telling, going beyond what we're used to. Send an email when you reserve a room, send an email when you're ready to check in. Now we're talking about really good communication and engagement with the customer base and with their guests. And that's just amazing to hear. So I think it'd be awesome if you can take us now through some additional opportunities that you see as it relates to Responsys, and where you think the marketing solutions may be a good play for hoteliers.
Yeah, maybe the way that I set this up to talk through it is, we see marketers kind of engaging at different levels. Everybody's starting at a different point, and there's different things you want to be focused on. And so as you think about sort of the maturity that it takes to get to different levels of this type of engagement that we were just talking through, Responsys supports kind of each of those different levels and helps you get there in different ways. And sort of the first level and the first place that you want to engage is, how do you connect sort of your on-property systems with how you're communicating with your customers, so that you can start to use the information from both systems to really personalize what should be the next communication. How do we make sure that you get the right communication? How do we make sure that communication is relevant to the conversations you're having, right? If someone has an issue as a guest that's been notified in the front desk, we shouldn't be immediately asking you, would you like a discount on that thing that you just complained about, right? And so a lot of this is sort of two things. How do we simplify the campaign development for your marketing team? So we're pulling multiple communication channels together. As you'll see here, this is kind of an example of being able to decide, where should we communicate with someone? Do they want the notification in their app? Do they want to get an SMS? Should we be sending them an email? Should I be putting a notification in, Opera so that the front desk staff sees it the next time they ask them about something, right? Or they call down for room service and you have a notification that, hey, be careful of X, or they click through on Y. And you can start to really connect the operations of your business with how you're communicating with them. That's sort of the first level, is start to connect those pieces so that the personalization is relevant to what's actually happening on property and not just a marketing team sending emails. And then as you start to think about, okay, we've got those two systems connected and we're starting to be sort of a cohesive group. Now what you really want to do is start to nuance the communication based on who someone is. You referenced this earlier, right? If it's a family, there's probably one set of communication you want to be talking about. If it's someone who just got married and is on a honeymoon, you're going to have a very different set of communication. Probably involves a lot more champagne. Although I don't know, I have kids, might need champagne when they go to sleep, but there's different ways that you're going to communicate how that champagne is talked about. And separately, you want to start thinking about things like, how do I layer in loyalty status in the right way, right? My father, for example, he might have shown up on your property and you're not thinking that much about it, except for the fact that, like, he is the CEO of a business that has many, many people who travel. And so while his individual travel may not be that important, if you can layer in all the people that are related to his individual travel, it might make sense for you from a lifetime value of the whole account to upgrade him, right? Even though he doesn't justify it otherwise, to be able to identify, I can send you a message about a promotion that you should be upgraded. And that data now is in the system and allows, like, the person at the front desk to know, hey, I know this is an out of character upgrade, but it's going to make a lot more sense. And we start to orient all of the communication around, how do I identify when you're fatigued and I should communicate less? How do I identify when you're the type of person who should be offered a promotion because your recency, frequency, monetary spend dollar models identify you as someone who is likely to buy the next offer. And so we think about, like, how do we take all that and make that really easy for a marketer to actually execute on by creating simple rules in the actual systems. I don't have to make 18 versions of that email. I can make one email with different dynamic blocks that react based on what we know, right? I can start to use AI to make some of those, which channel should I execute on decisions, or which offer should they get next decisions. And so it's ultimately taking kind of the ease of use and now extending it to more sophisticated use cases kind of across the board. And then ultimately, this is the fun that everybody loves to talk about, and we love it too, because we're seeing some really interesting things here. This is really starting to do things where you're doing advanced data augmentation, right? So we have, like, data in our data cloud that can start to identify the type of buyer that you are, or the type of traveler you are. Oh, are you you're a luxury casual traveler? Okay, maybe I don't want to talk to you about the highest end piece of, the highest end penthouse, but I want to talk to you about that deluxe suite because I know that that's the thing you're going to be most interested in. And it allows me to start tailoring that information in. And then I can start to layer that together with machine learning models predicting, like, groupings of other people that you travel like, in a way that helps me really identify what has worked in the past. Which offer should we be putting in front of them, right? And even start to layer in things like, oh, the offer I was going to give them was about the cabana, but it's raining that day. Maybe we should offer them an excursion that's an adventure through town, right? And so being able to react based on what's happening allows you to get much closer to having that level of personalization that is like the best concierge that you call down and say, help me find what to do next, right? And so a lot of that comes from our perspective, comes into collecting and pulling all of that customer data together, start to do really in-depth analysis on it, layer in the different levels of what you understand about someone, and start to coordinate that with what's actually available on property. There's no sense in offering an upgrade if the 2 upgrades that you had available were already sold, right? There's no sense in offering a thing if the weather isn't going to accommodate it. And so you can really start to layer all of that together to create this really personalized experience that becomes really rich and enjoyable and causes people to want to come back over and over again and recommend you to their friends. So from our perspective, it's a really interesting way of being able to innovate based on using the power of big data, AI, and not just that, being able to do this thing that's only available at Oracle, which is being able to pull together all of what you understand about a customer and connect it with everything you understand about the operations of your property, and being able to really connect the two is where a lot of that magic that happen. You can do some of it if you have data on either side, but when you can connect the two, it allows you to really innovate how you're able to connect with your guests. And ultimately, part of that comes to adapting to what their needs are, being able to identify it, being able to see it happen, being able to adapt the messaging and the conversation to who they are and what they're doing. And all of that adds up to being able to grow sort of those relationships. And if you think about it, this is Ross and I talk about this every now and then. You've got to be able to balance the demand that you're generating from the customers who will become your guests with your ability to deliver on that, and sort of the supply of which rooms are available, how quickly can you turn them over. That's what creates growth. If you have too much demand and you can't deliver on it, or you have too many rooms available, you don't have people in the room, you can't actually grow effectively. And so being able to layer all of this together allows us to be really effective. And it's been a blast working with a lot of people in the hospitality industry and really helping them grow effectively. So
that's great, Cody. I mean, this was just an amazing overview of what's possible. It's great to see the areas that you've highlighted here, especially around the areas of innovation, where if you think about innovation and adapting, those two go hand in hand, especially in the world that we're living in now. We don't know what our guests are going to require and expect in the future, but having the right solutions in place to allow you to communicate and engage with them effectively is really the key to what you've talked about in the growth area. So thank you so much for walking us through those examples, through your story.
Sorry to cut you off. I'll give you one quick example real quick. You just brought this up, and I think this is helpful right now, given the environment we're in. One of the hardest things a lot of times that marketers deal with is you'll often be planning like months in advance. And that used to work, right? I could plan campaigns months and months in advance. One of the customers we're dealing with right now, every 4 weeks for the last 3 months, whether they can have people on property or not, legally, like from the region they're in, the decision of whether or not they can have a certain number of people on property or not has changed like every 4 weeks. And so if your campaign cycle is 6 weeks long, you actually can't execute anymore. And so this is like a lot of what we see happening today is you've got to be able to move faster just to keep up with, can people even be on site? And how do you communicate that effectively?
That's a great example.
I agree with everything you're saying.
No, that's great. And I love the example you throw it in and how it kind of ties everything together. It's a perfect example. So Cody, let's just talk about how do we get more information if the audience—
Are you asking me to be a marketer again?
I'm asking you in your marketing hat, how do we get more information?
Come talk to us on Twitter, come talk to us on Facebook, connect with us on LinkedIn. We've got some great blogs on hospitality. Also, I think there should be some landing pages. If there's not, let us know. We should be sending you more email. That's what we do on the marketing side. And we'll let you know. Love to connect with you and start talking about how we can, help you with some of these and figure out where you are in your maturity and kind of what the next best step would be. So looking forward to working with you in the future.
That's great. Thank you again, Cody. It was great to talk with you. I'm so happy to hear about everything that's happening in the space and how we can work better together, how our hoteliers can get the benefits of the solution, and looking forward to hearing from everyone that's listening to the solution right now and what we can do to work together. Thank you again, Cody, and everyone have an enjoyable day.